You might think you already know this story. The Evans story, the famous kidnap king that was arrested in Lagos. Case closed. I think that was all you were told about the case. But what if I told you the most shocking part of Evans' story is not how he kidnapped people. It is how long he lived freely, right in front of everyone, without being stopped. And even more disturbing, how he turned fear into something that looked like a normal business. So if you listen closely, you'll start to see something most people missed. So let me tell you something that still feels unreal when you hear it. There was a time in Nigeria when one man made rich people afraid to even pick unknown calls. Not because of scams, but because of kidnapping. That man was Evans. Now, this is not the kind of crime you picture in your head. He didn't look rough. He didn't move like someone hiding. In fact, he was living comfortably in Lagos in a good house, moving freely like a normal person. But behind that normal life, he was running one of the most dangerous kidnapping operations the country had ever seen. And the scary part of this, for years, nobody could stop him. People were getting kidnapped one after the other. Businessmen, wealthy individuals, sometimes even people who were just connected to money. And once Evans picked you, escaping was almost impossible. Families would receive calls that would change everything. Calm voice, no panic, just clear instruction. Bring money if you want to see your loved ones again. And these were not small amounts. We are talking of millions of naira. And what made it even more worse is how organized everything felt. It didn't seem random, it felt planned, like someone was watching, waiting and studying people before striking. And the police, they kept chasing shadows for many years because every time it looked like they were getting close, Evans disappears again. No mistake, no trace, nothing. Until one day, something slipped. Now, here is where it gets even more disturbing. Evan was not just doing kidnapping. He was running it like a business. I'm serious. This guy had a system. He had people working for him. Everyone had a role. Some people follow targets around quietly, watching their daily routine, where they go, who they talk to, what time they leave home, everything. Nothing was rushed. And once they show about the target, that is when they move. The kidnapping itself was always very fast. No warning, no time to react. One moment you are fine and next moment you are gone. And then they take you to somewhere nobody would even think of. Not some hidden forest or not far away. Sometimes right inside the city. Normal looking houses, quiet streets, places where people are living every day of their life, not knowing that someone is being held inside. And inside those places, it was bad. Victims were tied up, sometimes chained. They were kept in small places with little food, and the goal was simple: break them mentally. Then the call would start. Evans would call the family himself. Calm, no shouting, no emotion, just straight to the point. If you want to see him again, this is the amount. And he meant it, because Evans was patient. He could keep some of them for weeks, even months, until every kobo was paid. And that is how serious it was. This wasn't just a crime for survival anymore. This was control. But no matter how careful someone is, they always make one mistake. And for Evans, that mistake started small. At some point, the police began to notice a pattern, the same style, the same type of victim, and the same way ransom calls were made. So it didn't look random anymore. It looked like one person behind everything. So they started digging deeper. Quietly, they tracked phone calls, they followed leads, they picked up small pieces of information that didn't really make much sense when it started. But when they started putting everything together, it started to form a picture, and that picture kept pointing at one name: Evans. Now, here's the thing. This wasn't the first time they had heard about him. He had already been linked to multiple cases before, but somehow he always slipped away. This time was different. They got closer than ever. They found location connected to him. They identified some of his men, and slowly the space around him started getting tighter. Evans didn't know it yet, but he was being watched. Every move, every connection, every mistake. And then came that moment everything collapsed. One morning in 2017, the police finally found him, not hiding or not running. He was sitting comfortably inside his house in Lagos like nothing had ever happened. And that was the beginning of the end. When the police entered his house in Lagos, everything changed in seconds. Evans didn't fight, he didn't run. He was caught just like that, calm, almost like he knew the game was finally over. But what they found after that arrest shocked a lot of people. This was not just a man in the shadows. This was someone living well, comfortable home, expensive items, a life that didn't match the kind of crime he was committing. And then came that confession. Evans started talking. He explains how he chose his target, how long he watched them, and how his team carried out operations. He even spoke about ransoms that ran into millions. At that point, people began to understand the scale of what he had been doing. This wasn't just kidnapping, it was organized, planned and repeated over and over without fear. For many families, this damage had already been done. Some paid everything they had just to get their loved ones back. Some never fully recover from that experience till today. And the truth is, stories like this don't just end with an arrest. They leave something behind, fear. Because it makes you realize something uncomfortable. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are not the one you expect. They look normal, they live among everyone else, and you may never even notice until it is too late. Now, let me leave you with something that really stays with you after hearing this story. Because the arrest of Evans was not just the end, it was just the beginning of another chapter. After he was caught in 2017, everything moves to court, and this is where people expected to finally see justice play out clearly. At first, Evans shocked many people again. He pleaded guilty. Yes, the same man who had built a whole empire around kidnapping suddenly admitted to his crimes. It felt like the case would end quickly, like everything was already settled. But then, something changed. He came back and said he was not guilty. That one move slowed everything down. The case became longer, more complicated, different changes, different court appearances, and people started asking one question. Was he trying to buy time, or was there something else going on behind the scene? As the trial continued, more detail came out, more victims, more operations, more proof of how deep everything went. And then, judgment started coming in. In 2022, a Lagos High Court finally sentenced Evans to life imprisonment for one of the kidnapping cases. Yes, you heard me, life imprisonment, no coming out, no second chance. And that judgment was a big moment, not just for victims, but for the whole country. It sent a message that no matter how powerful or untouchable someone feels, there is always a limit. And it didn't stop there. In 2023, another court gave him additional 21 years in prison for a separate kidnapping case. So now, when you look at everything together, this was a man who once controlled fear across cities, now facing the rest of his life behind bars. But even with that, there is something deeper you should think about. Because Evans didn't just appear overnight. He studied people. He understood how money moved. He knew how to target victims and break them. And that tells you something important. Crime like this doesn't just come from chaos. Sometimes it comes from planning, from patience, like from someone watching quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that is why stories like this matters. Not just to shock you, but to remind you that you should be careful out there. Be careful about your movement. Be careful about things you share with people. And never assume you are too small to be noticed. Because in Evans' world, everyone connected to money was a target. And before his arrest, many people never saw it coming. Some victims couldn't live to tell their stories. But I will, Ayodeji Talks Crime. I will see you guys on the next one.